What if the power to heal our world was never gone? It was simply buried. Tonight I want to tell you about the moment someone pulled those secrets back into the light. It began when a stranger appeared out of nowhere, clutching a worn leather tome that hummed with quiet energy. No one knows where this person came from or how they found the grimoire, but they insist it holds lost teachings far older than any living memory, teachings rooted in what we now call white magic. The stranger didn't speak of curses or sinister rituals. Instead, they spoke of service, compassion, and a kind of power that heals rather than harms. As they flipped through pages covered in strange symbols, they mentioned a name, John Dee. In London in 1582, Dee, court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth, sat in a dimly lit room with his scryer Edward Kelley. Desperate for wisdom beyond mortal reach, Dee and Kelley gazed into a polished crystal ball, and what they saw felt like more than imagination. Kelley claimed that angels spoke through the glass, teaching them a language never heard on earth. They wrote down those angelic keys, believing they contained formulas for curing plagues and protecting innocent lives. Dee didn't seek power to dominate. He wanted to mend wounds both physical and spiritual. But the world around him feared what they didn't understand. The church called him a heretic, competitors called him a charlatan, and manuscripts vanished or were locked away. Over centuries, those keys became legend. Half-remembered whispers passed from one occultist to the next, until the stranger showed up with that same grimoire, trembling slightly, as if the book itself were alive. What the stranger offered wasn't a miracle in a bottle. It was a method, a philosophy, a mindset. They spoke of intention as the spark that turns simple words into healing energy. They said that each formula, each Enochian call was a piece of a puzzle, and that by arranging them carefully, one could open a channel to forces that bind us to life's creative pulse. But they also warned that a slip in focus, a flicker of selfish desire, could twist the brightest spell into something dark and chaotic. I asked the stranger why they had risked everything to reveal this now. They said our world is teetering on the brink, torn by fear, division, and a kind of spiritual amnesia. Somewhere along the line, people forgot that magic can be a tool for unity, not just spectacle. They said that if we want to heal ourselves, our communities, even our planet, we need to remember how to speak in that ancient, angel-taught language of light, but only if our hearts are in the right place. As I listened, I felt a tension, the promise of restoration, laced with the threat of disaster if someone misused these teachings. The stranger closed the tome with a snap, and for a moment the air felt charged, as if all the buried hopes of centuries were gathering behind those faded pages. They leaned in, voice low. Not everyone who seeks this knowledge is worthy. Many have tried to bury it forever. If you choose to learn, know that your path won't be easy. Questions will arise that force you to examine your own shadows. Then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, the stranger was gone, leaving the grimoire and a promise that tonight was only the beginning. We stand at a threshold, one step forward, and we might reclaim a legacy of healing. One misstep, and we risk stirring forces we barely understand. The question now is simple. Are we ready to walk this line between light and darkness, to touch that forgotten spark and carry it into our world? Whispers under the moon have a way of drawing you in. They make you wonder if what you thought was lost has only been waiting for the right moment to return. And so I ask you, when was the last time you felt that thread of possibility? Because the stranger says those ancient keys are waiting to awaken, and if you're brave enough to listen, they might just change everything. The moment the grimoire's worn cover closed, its weight in your hands felt like a bridge between centuries, an unbroken line from whispered rituals in shadowed chambers to your fingertips tonight. If the stranger's claim was true, these angel-taught keys didn't spring from thin air. They belonged to a much older tapestry, one woven by temple priests, medieval alchemists, and wandering healers who walked paths few dared to tread. To understand the depth of white magic, we must trace its steps from forgotten temples to the very palm you hold now. Long before John Dee and Edward Kelley sat around a glass mirror, ancient civilizations inscribed healing formulas on papyrus scrolls, clay tablets, and weathered stone altars. In Egypt, priests of Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, recited sacred words at dawn, believing that the first light carried divine energy. A fragment unearthed near Thebes, dated around 1500 BCE, contains a simple invocation. O gentle breath of Ra, weave through this body and restore what pain has broken. Archaeologists still debate how widely these spells were used. Some say only pharaohs and temple initiates had access, while others argue that village healers borrowed those prayers to cure fevers and snakebites. In either case, the core idea was clear. Word and intention carried power. As trade routes connected Egypt to the Aegean, these early practices mingled with Greek mystery schools. Philosophers like Pythagoras and Empedocles preached that reality was shaped by harmony, numbers, music, and the dance of elements. They believed that a whispered charm could realign a person's inner cosmos, much as tuning a lyre restores harmony to a melody. Aristotle later recorded remedies that combined plant essences with spoken invocations under specific moon phases. Though his works focused on empirical observation, he noted that the heart's resolve, when synchronized with nature's rhythms, can ease even the cruelest maladies. By the 1st century CE, Roman healers adapted Greco-Egyptian formulas. In Pompeii, a wall painting discovered in 79 CE shows a woman stirring a pot of mistletoe and wine, chanting a short phrase, "Spirits of the oak, lend me your fortitude." Inscriptions around the periphery, scratched by devotees, hint that she was part of a secret healing society, one foot in public medicine, the other buried in arcane rites. When Vesuvius erupted, many of these scrolls burned, but fragments survived, scattered among ash. Historians now believe such folk healing circles laid early groundwork for what we call white magic, combining tangible herbs with intangible intention. Centuries later, as Rome fell and Europe slipped into the Dark Ages, knowledge fragmented. Monasteries preserved fragments of Greco-Roman texts, but many were lost or misinterpreted. In the 9th century, Charlemagne's royal physician, Hildegard von Bingen, wrote volumes on medicinal plants, yet her work was as much a spiritual guide as a pharmacopoeia. She insisted that healing began in the soul. The mind is the root, sickness is merely the fruit. Hildegard's instructions on lavender baths and aromatic steam for calming fevers were essentially white magical practices couched in monastic theology. But when the church tightened its grip, any hint of magic risked suspicion. Over time, Hildegard's words were catalogued under herb law, stripped of their mystical context. Fast forward to the medieval Kabbalists of Spain and Provence. These Jewish mystics delved into the Zohar, a 13th century text that argued creation itself was an act of words, divine letters forming the universe. They believed that humans, created in the image of a word-wielding God, could echo that creative force. Kabbalistic healers would inscribe angelic names on parchment and infuse olive oil or spring water with prayers. Consuming a drop of that oil, they taught, could rebalance a patient's energy and ward off spiritual malaise. But as the Inquisition spread, Kabbalists buried their rituals, teaching them only to circles sworn to secrecy. Their methods survived in hushed tradition, passed orally from master to apprentice. Then came Paracelsus, the Swiss alchemist whose midnight pharmacy story became legend. In 1526, during a virulent plague that swept through European villages, Paracelsus loaded his satchel with rare alpine herbs, gentian, mountain yarrow, and the elusive angel's trump. Under a moon so full it lit the snow like daylight, he climbed into the high Alps, chanting an invocation. O spirits of stone and star, guide my hand to gather what heals. Locals whispered that he found herbs others could not see. that blossoms glowed faintly as he plucked them. When he returned, Paracelsus mixed those botanicals into tinctures, repeating the divine syllables he claimed to have received in visionary dreams. Villagers who drank his concoctions reported rapid fevers breaking and wounds closing faster than any known remedy. While science shunned his work as quackery, Paracelsus insisted the true cure lay in ignis spiritus, the fire of spirit infused into matter. That ethos, melding herbs with sacred intent, becomes the heartbeat of white magic's healing lineage. Yet, if these practices worked, why did they fade? Part of the answer lies in power and fear. As kingdoms centralized, rulers saw independent healers as threats to their authority. Royal courts recruited physicians trained in universities, where Cartesian logic reigned. Mystical healers were branded superstition. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church declared any invocation of angels, outside sanctioned liturgy, heretical. Monasteries became gatekeepers. A miracle had to pass ecclesiastical scrutiny or be condemned as witchcraft. As a result, many practitioners either adapted, masking white magic as mere herbalism, or went underground, passing grimoires from hand to hand, always cautious about who could be trusted. Yet these teachings never died completely. In remote alpine valleys, wise women continued to blend chants with medicinal decoctions. In North Africa, Sufi mystics preserved verses for healing the soul and the body, scribbling prayers into notebooks tucked beneath floorboards. In the Americas, when Spanish conquistadors arrived, native shamans reminded newcomers that their own traditions, long before European contact, had similar principles, a combination of sacred words, offerings, and botanical wisdom. When colonists labeled these practices witchcraft, they only succeeded in driving them deeper into hidden communities. So how do those ancient echoes find their way to your hands now? The stranger didn't just discover a single grimoire, they unearthed a convergence of threads, Egyptian papyri, Roman inscriptions, Hermetic texts, Kabbalistic sheaths and alchemical recipes, all woven into a single volume. Each layer contributed to a philosophy, that healing begins with intention, that words carry vibration, that the boundary between spirit and matter is porous. In that sense, white magic is less an isolated discipline and more a universal current running beneath history's surface, accessible to anyone willing to learn its language. But there's another reason so much was hidden, a hidden cost when words carry power. Governments, churches, even our own doubts conspire to bury anything that hints at a reality beyond the five senses. For centuries, magic became a scare word, equated with demonic pacts or mindless manipulation, until only a few, like John Dee and Paracelsus, dared speak of an angel-lit path. Even then, Dee's angelic keys were chopped up, copied poorly, or hidden in private vaults. Paracelsus's midnight chants were recorded by disciples whose own notes were seized by religious authorities. And yet, here you stand holding that lineage in your hands. The journey from those Egyptian altars to your fingertips only makes clear one thing. Every piece of this legacy was tested by fire, by political repression, doctrinal purges, and human skepticism. Each time someone tried to snuff it out, a handful of devoted seekers rescued fragments, tucked them away, and waited for a moment in history when the world might be ready again. That moment, the stranger hinted, is now. Our age, plagued by disconnection and a thirst for meaning, is fertile ground for reclamation. But remember this, recovering lost knowledge isn't enough. The real work begins when you learn to speak those ancient words with clarity of heart and purpose. Any slip, any trace of ego, could unravel centuries of careful preservation. The question now is not just what these teachings say, but what you will bring to them, and what you'll risk if you falter. The grimoire lies closed once more, its pages whispering beneath your fingertips. You can sense a pulse, as if the book itself waits for your intent to align with its ancient current. Beyond this moment lies a voyage, one that threads through Egyptian temple halls, medieval scriptoriums and alpine peaks under a full moon. Each step will reveal how white magic survived, why it was nearly lost, and how you might channel that same healing spark in your life. So with the grimoire cradled in your arms, ask yourself, are you ready to uncover what's been buried? Because from forgotten temples to your hands, white magic is more than an idea. It's a living tradition waiting to be awakened. When you cradle that grimoire in your hands, feeling its pages tremble with buried promise, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to shortcuts, invocations uttered for selfish gain or half-learned formulas that fizzle into disappointment. The other path, the one the stranger hinted at, demands something far more profound. A commitment to ethics so absolute that your heart and intention become as vital as any spoken word. Because white magic, at its truest, isn't a parade of pyrotechnics. It's a mirror held up to your soul, reflecting your truest motives and your deepest shadows. Think back to Dion Fortune in London, during the darkest nights of World War II. She wasn't weaving glamour spells or bending wills. She moved quietly among ruined streets and frightened families, gathering a handful of seekers into a hidden room lit by a single candle. Fortune believed that white magic's first law was service, tending to the wounded not only of flesh, but of spirit. When she formed her secret healing circle, she insisted every member write down their personal fears, resentments, even grudges, exposing the roots of their shadows before they dared channel any energy. One night, a man with unspoken jealousy joined the circle. He watched as Fortune laid her hands upon a wounded volunteer, whispering an invocation for rapid recovery. But his heart, heavy with envy, jealousy that Fortune wasn't paying him the same attention, began to fray the ritual's threads. The next moment, instead of relief, the volunteer's breathing labored, her fever spiked. Fortune, sensing an imbalance, froze. She could not proceed until the man confessed his resentment. Only when he did, voice shaking, tears in his eyes, did the circle's energy realign. The woman's fever broke by dawn. That lesson crystallized a core principle, intent over incantation. No matter how precise the words, how ceremonious the gesture, if the practitioner's inner landscape is fraught with unacknowledged darkness, the spell cannot unfold as intended. In fact, it may backfire. Fortune's circle teetered on the edge because one member's shadow was allowed to fester. In that moment, white magic became a high-stakes crucible, one that could either purify or consume. So where does ethics enter? Imagine intention as the seed of a tree. If that seed harbors bitterness, selfish ambition, or fear, the tree it yields will grow tangled, its roots choking the ground. But if the seed is planted with compassion, clarity, and humility, its roots anchor deeply, its branches offering shade and fruit. White magic is about cultivating that seed. Before any sacred words are spoken, the practitioner must ask, why am I doing this? What darkness lies concealed in my desire? Across centuries, mystics have coined terms like purity of heart and clarity of will to describe this. In Kabbalistic schools, a student first spent years studying ethical pillars: tzedakah, charity; chesed, kindness; and gevurah, restraint, before learning a single name of the angels. In Hermetic traditions, alchemists wrote cryptic maxims: solve et coagula, dissolve the ego's impurities before recombining them into something true. And even in indigenous healing lineages, shamans sang songs of self-examination before conducting any ritual. Let's illustrate this with a more modern analogy. Imagine white magic as a medical procedure. A surgeon wouldn't operate before sterilizing tools, reviewing the patient's history, and obtaining informed consent. Likewise, a white magician must sterilize her mind, examining biases, acknowledging fears, and ensuring that no hidden agenda guides her work. Failure to do so is malpractice, and the consequences can be dire. Consider again Fortune's circle. As soon as the jealous man's resentment surfaced, Fortune paused the ritual. She guided him through a short process, vocalizing his envy, examining its roots and offering genuine contrition. Only then could he channel energy with a healed intention. The ritual's final outcome wasn't just the volunteer's recovery, it was the man's own transformation. He learned that white magic demands not only outward service, but inward integrity. But how do you cultivate that integrity in your own life? First, recognize that self-awareness is the keystone. Begin with reflection, journaling about your motivations. Ask yourself, do I seek this magic to control others or to bring genuine healing? Am I prepared to let go of ego-glorifying outcomes? The answers won't always be neat. You might discover buried resentment towards someone who doubted you, or fear that your efforts will go unnoticed. Facing those truths can feel like staring at a mirror in pitch darkness, but it's essential. Next comes shadow work, a phrase that can sound mystical, but which really means identifying and integrating aspects of yourself you've repressed. Maybe you grew up believing magic was inherently sinister, because you heard tales of sorcery gone wrong. That fear becomes a shadow, influencing your approach without your conscious awareness. Before reciting any healing invocation, you must confront that fear. Acknowledge its presence, understand its origin, and release its grip. Only then does your intent shine without distortion. Once you clear your inner space, you move to ethical frameworks. Most white magic lineages emphasize a simple code: do no harm, act with compassion, and respect free will. But how does that play out in practice? Suppose you wish to channel energy to help a friend overcome anxiety. You set your intention to bring calm and confidence, but what if you unconsciously intend to keep that friend dependent on your guidance? The boundary between service and manipulation can blur. Ethical white magic insists that you consult the friend, directly or through prayer, asking whether they consent to receive your energy. Consent ensures you're not imposing your will under the guise of benevolence. This principle of consent echoes across traditions. In Hindu Tantra, a guru wouldn't offer a mantra until the disciple expressed genuine readiness. In African diaspora practices, offerings to spirits are made only after divination confirms both parties' willingness. Without consent, white magic becomes coercion, an act antithetical to its healing ethos. Even with consent and a pure heart, white magic practitioners watch for immediate feedback. In Fortune's circle, the sudden backlash when the man's jealousy surfaced was a signal. The energy field had destabilized. Similarly, if you attempt a healing spell and the recipient experiences increased agitation, or if you find yourself unexpectedly drained, these are messages that your intention or method needs adjustment. The universe, as many mystics agree, is not a blind force. It responds to the quality of your vibration. When you align yourself ethically, the path becomes transparent, like a river flowing smoothly over pebbles. When you stray, the current churns and throws warnings your way. Still, questions linger. Can anyone truly maintain unwavering purity of intent? What about unconscious biases? Attitudes toward gender, race, or class that seep into even our best-laid plans? This is where ongoing self-examination and humility come in. You might perform a ritual to bring abundance, but if you secretly believe only a certain group deserves prosperity, your spell's foundation cracks. White magic at its heart is a lifelong discipline of honesty. Every ritual is a checkpoint. Am I acting with integrity now? Am I ready to be transparent about my flaws? To illustrate the stakes, recall another cautionary tale from Fortune's London coven. During a particularly desperate hour of the Blitz, Fortune and her circle attempted a mass protection ritual for a bombed neighborhood. The intention was noble: shield innocent families from further harm. But one member, reeling from personal grief, unconsciously aimed the energy through a lens of desperation. When the ritual began, a stray energy surge unsettled fortunate residents on an adjacent block, causing confusion and panic. It wasn't a malicious curse, but the misaligned intention had consequences. Fortune halted the rite, urging everyone to regroup, to sit with their grief, to recognize that trying to protect others without first healing their own pain was like building on sinking sand. That night, Fortune realized that white magic demands not only self-awareness, but emotional resilience. If you channel energy from a place of despair, you risk projecting that despair outward. Only when each practitioner acknowledged their sorrow, sat with it and released it, could they realign their intentions. The final protection ritual succeeded, not because the words changed, but because the circle's collective heart healed enough to become a single, coherent channel of light. So how do you carry this lesson forward? Begin by establishing a personal code. Write down 3 to 5 guiding principles. Simple statements like, I will seek consent. I will act with compassion. I will acknowledge my fears before every ritual. Keep these principles where you'll see them, on your altar, in your journal, or as reminders on your phone. Before any invocation, read them aloud. Let them shape the energy you bring to your work. Next, practice small acts of accountability. If you perform a brief blessing for your friend, invite them afterward to share how it felt. Did it feel empowering, overwhelming, uncomfortable? Their feedback is a mirror, showing you how closely your intention aligned with their needs. Over time, these small reflections build into a robust ethical muscle, strengthening your ability to channel energy responsibly. Finally, embrace ongoing initiation. White magic isn't a one-time achievement. It's a continuous journey. Reserve moments, weekly or monthly, to review your intentions, examine recent rituals, and write down any missteps. Maybe you cast a spell for clarity at work, but later discovered you'd resented a colleague who you felt was overshadowing you. That resentment becomes a teaching. Next time, address it before attempting any ritual. In that way, white magic becomes a path of inner alchemy. You aren't just seeking external results. You're transmuting your own base impulses into something golden. Compassion, wisdom, empathy. The ethics aren't a burdensome checklist. They're the very engine that powers your magic. Without them, any whispered invocation risks unraveling. Yet even as you commit to this path, tension remains. There are moments when you'll wonder if pure intention is enough. You might face circumstances, an ill loved one, a desperate financial crisis, where the urge to bypass ethics for quick results is powerful. It's in those moments that the story of Fortune's circle resonates most profoundly. When the man's jealousy nearly wrecked a healing ritual, Fortune didn't chastise him and move on. She held up a mirror to his envy until he faced it. Only then could the circle's healing light flow uninterrupted. So as you prepare to learn the words, the formulas, and the rituals of white magic, remember this: every sacred spell is, at its core, an ethical act. If your heart wavers, if your motives slip even for a moment, the spell's power will scatter like dust in the wind. But if you align your intention, mind honed by self-awareness, heart tempered by compassion, spirit anchored in humility, then each invocation becomes a vessel of profound transformation. Tomorrow we'll explore those everyday tools, salt, candles, herbs, that can become conduits for your aligned intention. But tonight, take a moment to sit with these questions. What shadows lurk in my desire? Am I ready to face them? Because white magic's true power lies not in the words themselves, but in the clarity of the soul that speaks them. Now that you understand how unwavering intention and ethical clarity form the backbone of every spell, it's time to explore the simple, everyday objects that quietly carry immense power when charged with purpose. You might imagine white magic requires ornate wands, rare crystals, or impossible incantations. But the truth is far more surprising. White magicians throughout history have relied on humble tools, household herbs, a single white candle, a bowl of water, even your breath, to transform reality. Let's dive into this alchemy of the everyday, uncovering how seemingly ordinary items become conduits for intention, and revealing a few lesser-known facts that might just reshape how you view your own kitchen pantry. Think first of Hildegard of Bingen, that extraordinary 12th century polymath who lived in a remote abbey on the Rhine. Most people know her as a composer and visionary, but few realize how she revolutionized healing by merging sensory experience with intention. Legend says that when her patients suffered illness, whether fever, stomachache, or a deep malaise of spirit, she asked them to immerse their feet in a basin of warm water, infused with lavender and fennel. As they soaked, Hildegard would chant a short blessing, her voice rising and falling in a melodic pattern that she believed aligned human breath with divine breath. The water would steam gently, carrying the scent of lavender through the air. The patient would close their eyes, breathe in deeply, and imagine the aroma weaving through their body, untying knots of tension. Those healing baths were not spa treatments. They were immersive rituals that engaged all the senses. Hildegard was fond of saying, "The body is a temple, treat it as such." By marrying touch, warm water on skin, scent, therapeutic herbs, sound, her blessing, and visualization, guided imagery of health, she created a multi-layered portal for healing, one that modern white magic still echoes. Remember, she wasn't scribbling arcane symbols. She was blending everyday herbs with clear intention, demonstrating that when you anchor your focus in sensory experience, you open doors to profound transformation. Fast forward to the 16th century, and consider Paracelsus's midnight trek into the Swiss Alps. We already know his story from earlier sections, but his herbalist approach remains a foundational example of everyday alchemy. Imagine trudging over frost-crusted ground at midnight, wind biting your cheeks, as you start reciting an invocation. "O spirits of stone and star, guide my hand to find what heals the body." Your only guide is the moon's glow on rugged peaks. When you discover gentian blossoms or mountain yarrow hovering above the snow, you pluck them gently, wrap them in linen, and whisper gratitude. Back in your lab, you combine those botanicals with spring water while chanting the same invocation. Each drop of tincture becomes a vessel for intention, a physical embodiment of prayer. In essence, Paracelsus treated the mountain herbs like writing implements. The plant's essence carried his words into the human body, unlocking a healing sequence that transcended mere chemistry. Across cultures, you see similar patterns. Tools that seem mundane become extraordinary when driven by focused intention. Consider salt, for instance. In many traditions, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and pagan, salt is a purifier, a protector, a preservative. But what if you looked beyond the image of a salt circle or a purification spray? Imagine sprinkling a pinch of salt into a small bowl of rainwater you collected earlier that day. As you drop each grain, silently state your intention. "May this water carry clarity to my mind." When the salt dissolves, it carries not just itself but your spoken purpose into the water. Now you might sprinkle that water across doorways or windowsills to dispel stagnation in your home. You could even sip a few drops if you feel so moved, envisioning the salt-charged water, aligning your own energy with clarity. In this way, salt shifts from mere seasoning to spiritual catalyst. Candles offer another striking example. You don't need a carved candle or a wax figurine depicting an occult symbol. A simple white candle, any white candle, can become a powerful ally. Here's how. Begin by holding the base of the candle in both hands. Take 3 deep breaths, and with each inhalation, picture yourself drawing in creative energy. With each exhale, imagine releasing doubt and distraction. Now, as you light the wick, mentally declare your intention, perhaps to bring peace to a restless mind or to ignite courage before a difficult conversation. As the flame catches, watch how the wick ignites and visualize that spark as the birth of your intention. For the next few moments, gaze into the candle's flame, letting your focus narrow until the world around you softens. Every flicker becomes a brushstroke, painting your intention onto the canvas of reality. But be wary. Not all candle magic is as straightforward as it seems. A common misconception is that simply writing a wish on paper, folding it under a candle, and burning it will guarantee results. In reality, the paper's message holds no inherent power, only the intention you infuse as you fold, place, and burn it. If your mind drifts, if your heart harbors doubt, you've essentially cast an empty spell. True white magic requires that your focus on that paper remains unwavering, your intention clear. If you can't hold that mental space, if you find your mind wandering to grocery lists or tomorrow's worries, pause. Take time to center yourself, revisit your motivations, and ensure your intention aligns with compassion and integrity. Now let's talk about the power of a humble feather. Yes, a simple feather may be plucked from your backyard or found during a walk in the park. Feather correspondences exist in many cultures. In Native American traditions, eagle feathers represent connection to the divine. In ancient Egyptian myth, the feather of Mayat stood for truth and balance. But you don't need to adopt an eagle's feather specifically. Any soft bird feather can become a tool for white magic. Here's one approach. Place the feather on your altar or workspace. When you sit to meditate or pray, pick up the feather gently and run it along your arms, as if brushing away unseen dust. As you do this, imagine the feather absorbing any negative energy clinging to your aura. Then, with a simple motion, wave the feather through the air around you, visualizing stale energy dissipating like morning mist. In a pinch, you can even use that feather to stir a bowl of water or oil, imprinting your intention into the liquid. Suddenly, a common bird plume transforms into an extension of your subtle energies. Oils and waters themselves deserve their own spotlight. You've likely heard of essential oils, lavender for calm, peppermint for focus, but traditional white magic often calls for charged oils. Take a small glass vial, fill it halfway with extra virgin olive oil, and add a sprig of rosemary or a few lavender buds. As you do so, set your intention verbally. With this oil, I invite clarity and healing. Seal the vial and hold it in sunlight for at least 1 hour. Sunlight acts as a magnifier of intention, infusing the oil with solar energy. When you return, you have a portable anointing oil. Dab a drop on your temples before meditation, or trace an anointing cross on your wrist if you need a moment of calm during a stressful day. If you carry it in your pocket, the mere presence of that vial can remind you of your original intention, anchoring your thoughts whenever you feel scattered. But don't overlook water, arguably the most adaptable tool of all. Once you've collected rainwater or purified spring water, you have a blank slate. Hold the water in a clear glass bowl, gaze into it, and speak your intention as if the water can hear you. May this water bring peace to my heart, you might say. Then you can mist your face, fill a bath, or pour a small amount into a diffuser. Each droplet resonates with your intention, spreading your purpose wherever you let it flow. If you want to deepen this practice, you can create moon water. On the night of a full moon, place the bowl of water on a windowsill, saying, "By the light of the moon, charge this water with gentle illumination." In the morning, you capture not just H2O, but the symbolic radiance of the moon. Use that moon water to mist your pillow before sleep, visualizing soothing dreams and restful nights. The water becomes a living blueprint of your longing for peace. Now let's address a few myths and misconceptions that often trip up beginners. One falsehood is that you must learn secret languages or complex invocations to see results. In reality, the most potent spells often use simple phrases in your own voice. The very act of speaking your intention aloud connects you to it in a concrete way. You don't need a ritual throat language, you need clarity of mind. Another myth is that only expensive crystals have magical value. While high-quality stones carry certain vibrations, a polished pebble from a riverbank can hold just as much power if you treat it as sacred. Place it on your altar, hold it during meditation, and imbue it with your intention. Over time, that river stone becomes a talisman, a tangible reminder of your path. Another misconception: you must cleanse your tools with elaborate rituals involving rare herbs or esoteric chants. Sure, some traditions call for smudging with white sage or sprinkling salt. Others recommend visualizations of white light washing over your items. But if you can't obtain white sage or you're short on time, a simple swish of clean water and a moment of focused intention are enough. Hold the item, close your eyes and say, "I release any energy not aligned with healing and light." That single sentence serves as an energetic reset. Cleansing is not about following a 1,000-year-old formula to the letter. It's about your genuine willingness to start fresh, to let go of stagnation. Finally, let's consider the ethical tension that sometimes arises around tool use. Imagine you wish to craft a protective amulet for a friend. You might gather a handful of protective herbs, a protective stone, and a piece of canvas to stitch it together. But if your friend hasn't asked for this amulet, you risk imposing your will no matter how well-meaning. White magic emphasizes consent even in tool-making. The amulet's power is only as strong as the recipient's openness to it. One way to navigate this is by sending your intention through distance. Place the components on your altar, hold them felt, and state aloud, "By your own free will may you accept this protective blessing." Then mail the amulet with a brief note explaining how to use it, lighting a white candle and holding the amulet over the flame carefully, while reciting the blessing. If your friend chooses to follow the instructions, that act becomes a form of consent, activating the amulet's charged energy. As you incorporate these tools, salt, candles, feathers, oils, water, stones, and simple words, remember that their true magic lies in the intention you bring. Without intention, they are mere objects. With clear focus, they become allies in your quest for healing, protection, and transformation. The real alchemy happens not in an exotic laboratory, but in your kitchen, your bathroom, your backyard. You don't need a sacred grove or a secret temple. The most potent altar can be a clean tabletop, a white cloth, and a few simple items chosen with care. Before we move on to crafting your first ritual, take a moment to look around your living space. What objects already hold meaning for you? Perhaps a chipped mug from your favorite coffee shop, a smooth stone you picked up on a beach vacation, a sprig of sage from a houseplant. Each of these can become a vessel of intention, a node in your network of white magic. By recognizing that power is woven into the ordinary, you're already stepping into the lineage of Hildegard, Paracelsus, and countless unsung healers who used what they had on hand to channel the divine. In our next section, we'll build on this foundation and walk you through your first white magic ritual, showing how to combine these tools and techniques into a cohesive, heart-centered practice. But for now, sit quietly with the knowledge that every object around you can serve as a bridge between the seen and the unseen. Gather your salt, your candle, and your water, and prepare to witness how intention, when tethered to a simple tool, can shift the very fabric of your experience. After all, white magic isn't about forging grand spectacles. It's about threading divine sparks through the tapestry of everyday life. And if today's lesson has taught you anything, it's that the alchemy of the everyday is within reach. No grand gestures required. When Raymond Buckland first stepped into his modest New York apartment in 1960, he wasn't dreaming of grand ceremonies or elaborate altars. He was simply a seeker who wanted to gather a handful of kindred spirits to explore what we now call white magic. With only 2 white candles, a bowl of salt water, and a few whispered words passed down from his English teacher, Gerald Gardner, Buckland invited a small group into a circle. No robes, no library of dusty tomes, just sincerity and a shared desire to bring healing and harmony into their lives. That humble evening marked one of the earliest public Wiccan circles in America, and yet its power lingered long after the candles burned out, because Buckland understood something essential. Genuine ritual radiates potency far beyond its outward simplicity. When you prepare your first white magic ritual, you're not trying to mimic a Hollywood spectacle. You're tapping into that same wellspring of intention that Buckland fostered. You begin by naming your purpose. Perhaps it's to invite calm before a tense family gathering, or to spark clarity in your mind as you face a difficult decision at work. Whatever it is, hold it lightly. A clear intention fuels the ritual, but clinging too tightly to a specific outcome can actually block the very energy you hope to channel. Start by gathering a handful of simple tools: a white candle, a bowl of purified water, a small dish of salt. These items aren't magical on their own. They become charged through your focused attention. Place them on a clean surface, perhaps a small table or a dedicated shelf. Take a moment to breathe deeply, closing your eyes and letting your mind settle. In that quiet space, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I truly seek? When Buckland lit his 2 candles that night, he didn't recite arcane verses or perform dramatic gestures. He simply held his hands over the flame and spoke a sincere blessing. By this light, we open our hearts and seek the path of peace. His voice was steady, imbued with the same gentle confidence that comes from knowing your intention is righteous. As you light your candle, imagine that spark igniting a thread of energy inside you, an ember of sincerity that will guide the rest of your practice. Next, reach for the bowl of water. Hold it in both hands and envision it as a living mirror, reflecting the clarity you hope to achieve. Let your fingertips graze the cool surface and quietly speak your intention again, this time more fully. May this water carry calm to my mind and healing to my heart. When you do this, you're not merely uttering words, you're weaving your intention into the water's very essence. You might feel a gentle expansion in your chest, as if the water is breathing back at you, acknowledging your request. Then sprinkle a pinch of salt into the water. Watch how each grain dissolves, disappearing yet transforming the water's vibration. In ancient traditions, salt purifies and protects. Here it becomes a vessel for your purpose. As you notice the salt swirling away, acknowledge any doubts or fears you're carrying. Let them dissolve too, released into that same water. If a jolt of anxiety arises, what if this doesn't work? Simply note it, then let it flow away. Doubt has no place in a white magic ritual that seeks to uplift. Once you've prepared your tools, return your focus to the candle. The flame flickers, alive and unpredictable, mirroring your own capacity for change. Lean in close enough to feel its warmth, but not so close that the heat distracts you. Speak your intention aloud, slowly and with conviction, as though addressing a trusted friend rather than a faceless force. I call upon gentle energies to bring clarity to my thoughts. I invite healing light to soften any tension in my heart. Feel the words rolling off your tongue, each syllable resonating in your chest. In that moment, you become both conduit and container. Your body holds the intention and your voice moves it into the space around you. As you speak, imagine a silver thread stretching from the flame, passing through your heart, and reaching toward the unseen currents that shape reality. See that thread carrying your words, carrying your desire to bring calm and understanding. If you worry about whether this visualization is real, remind yourself of Buckland's gathering, a handful of earnest seekers, a pair of candles, and profound shifts in perception that lasted long after the night ended. Your ritual doesn't need to look elaborate. Its power lies in the purity of your focus. When you feel the words have settled into the flame, pause, close your eyes and let the ritual's energy wash over you like a gentle wave. Notice any subtle shifts in your body, a warmth in your chest, a heightening of your senses, a moment of stillness in your mind. If you sense resistance, a knot of fear, a sting of impatience, acknowledge it without judgment. Even Buckland faced skepticism from his own attendees at first. Some whispered that magic was foolish, but as their hearts opened, a palpable sense of unity and hope arose in that cramped apartment. You too can experience that shift. It arrives when you let go of expectation and simply allow your intention to breathe. Finally, seal your ritual by extinguishing the candle with a soft breath. Avoid blowing it out harshly. Instead, use a gentle exhalation as though you're sending a message through the flame itself. As the last wisp of smoke curls upward, imagine it carrying your intention skyward. If you used the bowl of salted water, you might anoint your wrists or forehead with a drop, tracing the watery cross that symbolizes your commitment to clarity and calm. If you lack a quiet space for anointing, simply sip a bit of the water, tasting the salt's grounding presence as it reconnects you to the body. After Buckland's circle, attendees reported subtle yet undeniable changes. Tensions eased, hearts lightened, and some even felt a renewed calling to study spiritual practices more deeply. For you, this first ritual will similarly reframe how you perceive challenges. Instead of reacting to stress as an insurmountable tide, you'll begin to see your breath, your intention, and these simple tools as a way to navigate life's currents with intention. You'll find that lighting a candle before a difficult conversation can steady your nerves. That sprinkling salt water on your windowsill can shift the atmosphere of your home. That speaking a heartfelt blessing can reshape your mindset from anxious to hopeful. But beware of a few common pitfalls. It's easy to fall into a rote routine, repeating the same words without feeling their meaning. If you ever notice your mind wandering to errands or daydreams mid-ritual, pause and recenter. Our split focus dilutes your power. Another trap is fixating on a specific outcome. This ritual must land me the job, or it means I've failed. White magic isn't a quick-fix vending machine. It's a process of co-creative partnership with unseen forces. Plant your intention, then remain open to how it unfolds. Sometimes the path to your goal will twist in ways you never imagined, and that's part of the magic. There's also the temptation to equate more tools with more power. If 2 candles did it for Buckland, then 8 must be exponentially stronger. In reality, complexity can cloud clarity. Horace said centuries ago, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. A single, well-chosen ritual focused with unwavering intent can outshine any elaborate spectacle. Likewise, don't underestimate the role of action. If you light a candle to bring peace to a struggling friend, follow up with a kind word or a supportive gesture. Rituals set intention. Your behaviors extend that intention into the tangible world. As you integrate this knowledge into your daily life, you'll notice a fundamental shift. Stressful moments no longer feel like runaway trains. They become opportunities to pause, breathe, and intentionally reframe your energy. You may catch yourself lighting an unplanned candle before a challenging call, or muttering a quick invocation under your breath when anxiety tugs at your chest. So over time, these small acts reinforce a mindset of conscious co-creation. You're no longer a passive passenger in life's journey. Instead, you become an active participant, weaving your intentions into the tapestry of reality. Even after this first ritual, you'll carry within you a newfound humility and responsibility. White magic isn't a toy for whimsical whims. It's a language of the heart that demands sincerity. Whenever you feel tempted to cast a spell out of revenge or greed, recall Buckland's simple circle: 2 candles, a bowl of water, and a shared commitment to healing. If you discover a twinge of envy or resentment, address it first. Don't proceed until your heart is clear. In doing so, you honor the true essence of white magic: service, compassion, and the transformative power of intention. So embrace this first ritual not as a one-time spectacle, but as the opening sentence of a lifelong story. With each candle you light, each intention you voice, you draw yourself closer to a reality shaped by purpose and care. Like Buckland's early circle, your humble practice can ripple outward, touching unseen lives and reshaping your own. In that way, white magic becomes less a distant mystery and more a lived experience. One breath, one flicker of flame, and one sincere intention at a time. As Raymond Buckland's small circle of seekers parted that night in 1960, each walked away humming with the energy they'd co-created. That humble ritual, 2 candles, a bowl of water, a handful of sincere hearts, opened a door into the everyday potential of white magic. But how do you carry that flame beyond a single ceremony? How do you let intention and ritual weave seamlessly into your daily life so that your world becomes an extension of sacred practice rather than a sporadic performance? The answer lies in what Marian Green, founder of the Quest Conference on Magical Studies, called her herbal pocket charm. In the 1970s, long before Pinterest tutorials or artisanal apothecaries, Green traveled across Europe and North Africa, gathering wisdom from herbalists, folk healers, and reclusive mystics. Her journey led her to a simple truth: the most potent magic often moves quietly, concealed in daily routines. To illustrate, Green would take a small square of muslin, fill it with a pinch of dried lavender, rosemary, and rose petals, then sew it shut with blue thread she'd anointed with a drop of lavender oil. "Keep this charm in your pocket," she'd say. "Whenever you touch it, feel its fragrance and remember that you carry intention with you." Those who followed her guidance reported remarkable things: a wave of calm during stressful meetings, unexpected moments of clarity on their morning commute, and even a sudden sense of empathy when tensions rose in their families. You can start from that same premise. Imagine waking on a typical weekday, the alarm sound slicing through half-baked dreams. Your mind races. "I'll never finish that report in time," or "traffic will be a nightmare again." Instead of reaching for your phone to check emails, pause. Place a hand over your heart and take a slow breath. Visualize the soft glow of a candle's flame, warm, steady, unwavering. In that breath, you've already begun to extend ritual into routine. That single moment of quiet intention sets a tone for the rest of your day. With that in mind, choose a small item to serve as your daily talisman. It can be a smooth pebble you picked up on vacation, a coin pressed flat by decades of coming and going, or even a tiny piece of parchment inscribed with a single word like peace or clarity. The key is to treat it as if it contains possibility. Slip it into your pocket or bag. Each time your fingers brush against it, waiting for your coffee to brew, standing in line at the post office, pause to recall your intention. Breathe into that moment. Feel how a mere shift in awareness can dissolve tension and reconnect you to something larger than emails or errands. Marian Green's charm worked much the same way. She taught travelers to tuck it into their coat pockets, so that every time they drew out their keys or checked a map, the faint scent of lavender would rise, reminding them of their purpose, compassion, clarity, or groundedness. In an age when our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions, a small scented pouch can serve as a beacon, guiding you back to presence. You don't need to consult an ancient tome or perform a complex ritual in the middle of a board meeting. A simple touch, a single breath, and you've carried white magic into the flow of your life. But integrating magic into daily life isn't only about talismans or scented pouches. Imagine preparing your morning tea not as a mindless chore, but as a chance to ritualize intention. As water reaches a gentle boil, place a teaspoon of dried chamomile into your favorite mug. Before you pour, hold the teapot and whisper a brief blessing. "May this cup bring calm to my spirit and kindness to my words." Allow the steam to rise, closing your eyes as you breathe in the faint apple-like aroma. When you sip, feel the warmth trace along your throat, anchoring that blessing in your body. Later, when you feel impatience rising, perhaps a frustrating email or a spilled latte, you might recall the tea's warmth and exhale into the memory of that morning's prayer. Suddenly, a tiny ritual you perform before sunrise ripples into your afternoon, diffusing agitation where it once smoldered. As you weave these practices into your life, you'll notice that white magic becomes less a separate domain and more a lens through which you view everyday experiences. Did you scuff your shoe walking to your car? Rather than curse the inconvenience, place your hand on your heart and say aloud, "By this small stumble may I remember to move with mindful presence." The world doesn't suddenly transform into a utopia, but the act of recalling your intention reframes the moment. You shift from victim of circumstance to participant in a living tapestry of conscious actions. Yet there are pitfalls to watch for. It's easy to transform these practices into rote habits that feel empty. If you find yourself tapping your talisman or whispering a blessing on autopilot, your mind drifting to grocery lists or social media, pause. Take a breath without any agenda. Reflect on the intention you originally chose. Ask yourself, do I still believe in this purpose? Does it still speak to my heart? If the answer feels hollow, it's time to refresh your ritual. Perhaps you swap chamomile for rosemary in your tea, or choose a new talisman that resonates with your current journey. Evolution is part of the path. What grounded you last year might need a new form now. Another trap is comparing your daily rituals to others. Maybe you scroll through spiritual blogs and see someone performing elaborate sunrise ceremonies in a mountaintop sanctuary. It's tempting to feel your simple morning cup of tea is insignificant by comparison. But remember Buckland's 2 candles and Green's humble muslin pouch. Their power didn't come from spectacle. It came from authenticity. Your rituals should fit your life, not the other way around. If you live in a small apartment, a quick 5-second blessing over your coffee is infinitely more potent than an elaborate ceremony you dread performing. Now consider how white magic can enhance interpersonal relationships. When you greet a friend or family member, look them in the eye for a moment longer than you usually would. Feel the sincerity in your gaze. Hold their hand gently if the moment calls for it, and silently whisper your blessing. May your day hold kindness and clarity. You don't need to announce this out loud. Just let it guide your energy. That extra half-second of presence can transform a routine hello into an act of white magic. Over time, people notice the subtle difference. You radiate a warmth and attentiveness that's rare in a distracted world. They may comment on how you've been so calm lately, or I feel better when we talk. Without a single dramatic gesture, you've brought magic into human connection. In the evenings, before you sink into sleep, revisit your talisman or take a sip of your chamomile tea, if you still have some left. Reflect back on the day. What moments felt aligned with your intention? When did you drift away? Hold those observations without judgment. Every day is an opportunity to refine your focus, deepen your compassion, and strengthen your awareness. White magic is less about chasing perfection and more about nurturing incremental shifts. A softened ego here, a kinder word there, a moment of clarity amid chaos. As you embed these practices into your routine, you'll discover that the boundary between ritual time and real life dissolves. The same energies you invoked under candlelight become active in your commute, your workspace, your conversations, and even your dreams. That quiet ember Buckland ignited decades ago can burn brighter in your life right now, not because you've conjured something exotic, but because you've committed to living from intention. To bring this all together, imagine closing each day with a simple affirmation. Wherever I tread, I carry the light. Let those words be your final thought before sleep, setting the stage for dreams that align with your deepest purpose. Feel the line between the mundane and the mystical blur until they become one and the same. And as you lie there, perhaps a slight smile tugging at your lips, ask yourself, how will you carry this flame into tomorrow's ordinary moments? And what silent prayers will shape the world you share?